Hey there, this is a tutorial about how to replace the content of a cell phone screen. So this is some footage that I shot on my back porch with my crappy cell phone, and essentially I have a blue screen on the screen of the phone itself to use for keying, and as you can see there's a lot of reflections and smudges and stuff over the top of the screen, and this was shot on a DSLR, so the footage looks pretty crappy. It's got a lot of banding and noise issues, especially in the red channel. So the basic plan is that we will do a point track on each of the four corners of the screen, point 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then hopefully we'll be able to use the color of the blue of the screen to get a key for the finger. So for the tracking, you might think you could do a planar track and try to get a solution from that. But there's a lot of occlusions going on from the finger, and there's a lot of reflections over the top of the entire front of the shiny phone surface. So a planar track is not likely to work out well, although you're welcome to give it a try. So we'll get a key for the screen and use that to extract the finger. This could have been done over black, and it'll make getting all of these reflections and smudges back easier, but you would have to rotoscope the fingers going over the top of the screen. So having a blue or a green screen on the phone makes the process a little bit faster. So the first thing I will do is try to deal with this noise. Having a denoised plate to work with will help us get a more accurate track and get it easier, and it will also help us out when we want to key the screen. So to do that, I'm going to use a Nuke X denoise node, and I'm just going to set the analysis mode to analysis button, so it only analyzes when we press the button instead of every time we change something. So I'm just going to analyze the noise, and if we do a before after, you can see that it's removing a lot of the sort of artifacts from the DSLR and giving us a pretty sharp and reasonable result. So because my computer is ancient and slow and this node is pretty process intensive, I'm going to render out essentially a denoised plate, and through the magic of television I've already done that, so I'm going to bring that in, and I'll just use this in place of this denoise node. I rendered it out with pretty much the default settings in the denoise node. You could tweak it and try to get more detail back and a better result, but the defaults work pretty well for what I need. So here's the denoise plate, and first thing I will start off with, just putting our original plate over to the side for the moment, is to start on the tracking. So just returning the gamma of our viewer to normal, what I'm going to do is make a new tracker node. So the way Nuke corner pins work with corner orientation is that the lower left corner is track 1, the lower right corner is track 2, the upper right corner is track 3, and the upper left corner is track 4. So we're going to do it in that same orientation just to save ourselves a little bit of a headache, and we'll start off trying to track this corner. So if you look at the channels, a good idea to sort of initially think about is to find the channel or channels that have the most contrast, sort of to be the best feature to track. So it looks like obviously the blue channel has the most contrast and probably the least noise in this area, although we have removed a great deal of the noise. So what I'm going to do is set the channels in my tracker to only track the blue channel, and I'm going to change the warp type to translate and rotate, because the phone is sort of translating and rotating. And this warp type is, if you read this handy tooltip, basically what type of pattern the tracker is looking for. And so translate rotate will make it look for a pattern that is rotating and translating. So I'm going to also grab a new pattern every 8 frames, because that may or may not help us. So it's important to set the track origin to sort of the point where you want your corner pin to end up. So I'm going to put it sort of right at the corner of this line and this line. And then I'm just going to shift this over. And I'm starting on frame 135 because why not? And the phone is in frame, and I'm just going to start tracking forward from here. So I'll just center my viewer and track forward, and we'll see what happens. So it looks like we've slipped already. And the Nuke point tracker is kind of old and janky, so it takes a while to cancel. So if we just go back to where it slipped and try to figure out what happened. So it looks like there is a reflection coming over the top of the phone, and that is causing our track to slip. So I'm just going to go back to where it's good. Probably right in here. So we got an awesome 5 frames, and I'm just going to clear forward, and that'll delete the tracks that are not good. And I'm just going to track forward manually to try to get this. So that's slipping. And I'm just going to use my numpad keys to sort of nudge the track and try to get it so that it looks like it's not slipping. And I'm just comparing the previous frame to the current frame. And so if you hold down Command and use the numpad arrow keys, you can nudge by sub-pixel increments. This is sort of a tedious process, so bear with me. And I'm just going to grab a new pattern by hitting the grab button, and this will sample this pattern as a search area to look for on the next frame. I'm just going to track forward one. And it's slipping again. So what I might actually try to do is clear forward. Try to do an offset track for a few frames. So I'm going to grab this pattern down here. So if you hold Command and drag down, it changes the offset. Uh-oh. Is Nuke going to crash? Is it going to do it? Oh, no, not this time. So let's see. So let's track a frame forward. So that seems to be holding pretty well. The thing about offset tracks is you have to be careful that you're not getting a perspective shift, which will cause your original point to slip off of the point that you originally specified. So be aware of that. But this looks like it's doing okay. We'll do another frame. So that has slipped. So let's see. Maybe we'll nudge it back on this frame to about where it's supposed to be. this is not helping. Turn off. Turn off. Thank you. So just using my numpad keys. To sort of correct the slip. This is sort of what manual tracking is all about. You'll find that in the real world, you have to do this fairly often because point trackers do not always work perfectly. So again, I'm just comparing a reference frame to a new frame and trying to adjust for any slipping that's going on. And it's sort of a difficult task that you sort of get the hang of after a while. Okay, so I just sped through that a little faster than real time to save you some pain. And I'm just going to continue tracking forward, and let's see if we can get a couple of frames with our original source. So this seems to be working okay. A little bit of a slip here, so I'm just going to correct that. Using my center viewer to try to see the slip a little better. Looks like it's still, oh, actually this frame is off too, so I'm gonna go down a little bit. There we go. Track forward. We're defocusing a little bit, and I want to be a little bit closer to the outside, or slightly closer to the outside of this defocus. So just correcting this frame. Oh, Nuke. Okay, just back from restarting Nuke after a rather strange bug out. So just going to keep tracking. So this is, well, one of the more difficult corners because of all the reflection that's going on. Oh yes. So I'm just going to stop talking and track and fast forward, and you guys can live vicariously through my pain. Why do you crash, Nuke?
Unraveling a pattern.
Okay, I figured out a thing that helps. So if you hit S over the viewer and turn on use GPU for viewer, and in your preferences go to viewers and turn it on there as well, it seems to make things a bit more responsive and less crashy. Good to know. So to continue. Happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy, joy, joy, joy. Let's try this again. Aha! So this is a bug to watch out for in the Nuke tracker. If you notice, on frame 220 to 221, the tracker doesn't move. If you look in the graph of the data for track 1, well, it's kind of hard to see. Let's look here. So essentially, it's just copying, like it's not doing anything, and it's weird. This happens sort of randomly when you start a track, or when doing manual tracking, or just using the tracker. Sometimes it will basically skip a frame. So what you have to do, if you notice this, is go back to this frame and then just track forward a frame, and it should fix the problem. Sorry, my center viewer is getting in the way. So that's fixed that. So just keep an eye out for that and fix it if you see it. And definitely check for it. Okay, that's working pretty well. So I'm gonna keep using this offset track and do another 20 frames. Oops. And another 20 frames. And another 20 frames. Ah. So obviously this is where the phone goes out of the shot, and we're gonna have to manually track this probably. So I will clear my offset and clear forward and just track forward and see if we can position this approximately. So when dealing with extreme motion blur like this, the best approach is to position in the middle of the motion blur. So this is one edge of the motion blur, this is the other edge, and the actual edge, if this was shot without with a really high shutter speed, would be somewhere in between these two, probably right in here. So we're just going to try to position that properly. And actually, one thing we could do in this circumstance is increase our search area. And it might get a closer approximation, but in these circumstances, sometimes you just have to track it yourself. Okay. I'm just going to approximate this. Obviously, that's not going to track at all. Let's go forward a frame. So as long as this is more or less approximate, you won't be able to tell because it's going to be a blurry mess. This will probably be lower. Oh, and one thing you could do is just do an offset track to an area that is moving in the same way. Except it's not going to work, but you can position it based on that offset and get a better idea of where the other corner will probably be. Well, that's probably not going to be right, but we can get a X approximation. And then put this down here somewhere. Okay, good enough. So then we'll go back to the beginning and clear our offset and track backward. That goes out of frame again. So just reset our search area. And see what happens. So that's slipping. We want to be in there. Center viewer. Center viewer just really helps letting you see how a frame is off. Just going to do an offset track to another spot on the phone so that we get the relative movement. And it doesn't need to be perfect. Okay, that's the first corner more or less done. So what I'm going to do now is center my viewer and just watch this play back and see if there's any noticeable problems. And to do that, I'm going to turn off the overlay of the motion path and just let this cache out. Seems to be sticking pretty well. I'm noticing a little bit of slipping right there around frame 160. But other than that, it looks pretty good. So we're just going to call this good for now and come back and refine the track later if it becomes an issue. So moving on to track number 2. So I'm just going to turn track 1 off and turn on track 2. And let's see, what's a good frame to start on? How about here? So I'll just line up track 2 in about the same spot. Again, I'm just going to track the blue channel and translate rotate. Although it's probably scaling as well. Can't hurt. Let's switch it to scale. Translate rotate scale. And we'll start tracking. Yay, no reflections. Makes it work good. But my awesome gigantic finger is going to get in the way. Oh, and there it goes. So the way I'm going to deal with this is to do an offset track again. So this is a likely candidate on the same, or at least a very similar plane of parallax. And track forward. Oh, but we lost it. So I'm going to go back and find another offset track point. So I'm just going to go over here. Let's see if that gets wiped out. No. So hopefully this won't slip too much. Actually, you know what? Let's go back and clear forward and grab this point here. Track forward. Looks like we're still pretty close on there. Oh, and there's the thumb. So let's see. Go back. And let's just clear our offset now and track this. That's right, thumb. So it looks like we're slipping a little bit. Yeah, so we got a bit of a slip over these few frames. So I'm just gonna clear forward, grab a new pattern. And just do a little bit of manual nudging over a couple of frames. Okay. Looks like a little slipping a little bit there. Let's try to get this a bit closer. Not bad. Okay. So now we're going to have to find another offset track point. Back over here. Track forward. So I'm just going to grab this point again since it's closer. Yeah, and it looks like we slipped a bit. So I'm just going to go back and fix that. So clear offset. And I'm just going to reposition this to about where it was, which is right in here. So there's a bit of a jump right there. Let's see if I can just smooth that out over a couple of frames. So just select the track point and scooch it down. And I'm just sort of looking over here to see how much the frame is jumping. So let's see. Let's try doing an offset track to here and tracking back a frame. Or to here, tracking back a frame. Yeah, so let's track back a few more, see where we end up. That's not all that bad. Yeah, I buy that for now. Okay, moving on. Grab a new pattern. Track forward. Seems to be working pretty well, so let's try another 20 frames. Scratch that. And I hit the escape button, which closed my node, so come back. Yeah, so there's that bug again. It seems to happen when you use this track forward or range, or just the track forward sometimes too, so I'm just going to delete everything that I just did. And let's see, let's do it frame by frame. So yeah, we're going to lose the point there from the thumb. So let's come over here, do an offset track, and clear offset. Continue tracking. Gotta love that rolling shutter, eh? Not quite a straight line. Okay, cool. So there is point 2 done. On to point 3. This is a rather labor-intensive process, and I apologize that you have to suffer through it along with me. Point 3. This one should be easy, I hope. So there's not much reflection, which is good. There's no finger occlusions that I see, which is good. So let's go back here. Wait. On this track, did I? No, I didn't. So forgot to finish this backward. So I'm just going to go back and track this backward. Okay, track 2 officially done. Let's see, let's go back and start on track 3. Let's See, where did I line this up? So start on 134. I'm going to be brave. Let's see how this works. Very nice. And we'll just finish tracker 3 backwards. Okay, not noticing any slipping. Looks good to me. Sweet. Tracker 3 done. That was easy. And moving on to tracker 4. So similarly to tracker 1, this one's probably going to be difficult because there's a lot of reflection going on. One thing we can do to try to kill some of the reflection is actually grading our plate and increasing the contrast to try to get rid of the reflection. So if we throw in a grade node, the tracker is basically looking at the RGB data coming into it through its input. So if we change that RGB data coming in, essentially it will change what the tracker is looking at. So if we look at our blue channel and find a place where there's lots of reflection, maybe in here, and just crank on our black point, you want to be careful not to shift the position of the area we're tracking too much. So that might help us out a little bit. We'll see what it looks like. So I'm just going to view my plate, but the tracker is still going to see its input, so it'll still be graded. This is sort of just something to try. We'll see if it helps or not. So I'm just going to start on frame 134 again and track our point forward. Just going to close this grade node down. Okay, lost our track point. This may hurt us more than it helps us. We'll see. So as you can see, I'm just disabling the grade node and working without it because it's not really helping me out all that much. So here's the bug showing up again. Look at that. So to fix it, just track forward a frame. Let's just do a quick examination of track number 4. It may be a little bit sloppier than the other ones. So we got a little bit of a jump right here that I'm just noticing as it plays back. Sometimes you notice things at full speed that you don't, just looking at them frame by frame. So it's always good to check. Not sure what's up with this. Looks like another one of the bug frames, perhaps.